Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, issued a statement in tribute to his mother, addressed to Mummy, Mother, Your Majesty, 3 in 1. He said, "Your Majesty, it has been an honour and privilege to serve you."
Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, stood before his family at Buckingham Palace, the weight of a momentous task ahead of him. It was a quiet room, unusually quiet, almost suffocating with anticipation. The last will of Queen Elizabeth II, the monarch who had ruled for 7 decades, was about to be read, and no one knew what to expect. The air was thick with secrets and unspoken tensions as the family gathered in their dark, somber attire, eyes darting, avoiding contact, each person with their own thoughts and expectations. What would the Queen's final words reveal? What legacy had she left for them? This would be a moment that could change everything, not just for her children, but for the future of the monarchy. The task of reading the will fell to Prince Andrew, a surprising choice to many. For years, royal observers had expected that Charles, the heir to the throne, or even Princess Anne, who had been a steady and dedicated royal, would assume this role. But instead, it was Andrew, the Duke of York, who had been given this responsibility. Many whispered about his suitability for such an important task. He wasn't the obvious choice, and some questioned his competence given his recent controversies and personal struggles. Yet, here he was, standing in front of his family, the weight of their eyes upon him. In the silence of the room, Andrew hesitated for a moment. The wax seal of the envelope cracked open, and the sound echoed throughout the space. This wasn't just the reading of a will. It was a moment that would define the royal family's future. As Andrew began reading the words, "This is my last will," the room seemed to collectively exhale, as though holding its breath for the words that would follow. It almost felt like the Queen herself was speaking, her voice still commanding respect even after her passing. The atmosphere shifted, and everyone in the room became acutely aware of the significance of this moment. For some, there was a sense of relief. For others, anxiety was palpable. What would the Queen's final wishes reveal? The will was more than just a distribution of wealth. It was a statement of power, legacy, and the future of the British crown. As Andrew continued, he recited the formal words, addressing her children one by one. "To my dear son Charles," he began, reading the words with a gravity that seemed to hang in the air. There were no surprises here. Charles, as expected, was tasked with overseeing the care of Windsor Castle, a responsibility he had been groomed for his entire life. The acknowledgement was formal, but there was a subtle nod from Charles, a recognition of the role he had long prepared for. But then, the will took an unexpected turn. "I have given Sandringham estate to my daughter," Andrew read aloud. The words hung in the air, causing a shift in the room's energy. Sandringham, one of the royal family's most cherished estates, had always been associated with the monarchy's patriarch. The fact that it was now being handed over to Princess Anne caused ripples of surprise. Anne, who had often been seen as the overlooked member of the royal family in terms of property and titles, now held something far more significant. The shift in power was palpable. Charles's brow furrowed, his discomfort barely concealed. The estate had long been seen as something that would pass to the reigning monarch or the direct heir. Anne's inheritance felt like a challenge to the existing order, and Charles didn't quite know how to respond. But Andrew didn't stop there. The next revelation in the will was even more shocking. The Balmoral estate, long associated with the royal family and a symbol of their deep connection to Scotland, would no longer be controlled by a single individual. The Queen's decision to make Balmoral a shared estate for multiple family members was a break from royal tradition. Andrew's voice faltered slightly as he read, "The estate will hold a shared purpose." The implications of this move were far-reaching, signaling a shift toward a more communal approach to royal property, a departure from the old ways of keeping such assets within one royal's control. Charles, ever the traditionalist, appeared visibly uncomfortable with this change. Balmoral had been a symbol of personal ownership for the monarch, and now it would be shared among family members. It was an unsettling development for some, but one that seemed to reflect the Queen's desire for unity and family cooperation. Next, Andrew read a surprising yet meaningful bequest. "To Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, I give the Vladimir Tiara, which stands for grace and continuation." The tiara, a piece of royal history, was now passed on to Kate Middleton, a gesture that seemed to reaffirm her place as the future of the monarchy. Kate's eyes flickered with gratitude, but her expression remained composed. She didn't smile, but the significance of the gift was not lost on her. The tiara was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a message from the Queen, acknowledging Kate's role in the future of the royal family. The next part of the will was equally poignant. Andrew continued, "To Prince George, I leave my advice that responsibility as the future king goes beyond the title, and it is only as strong as the people who support it. The advice, heavy with history and expectation, was a reminder of the monumental weight that Prince George would eventually carry as the future monarch. The room grew even quieter as the words settled in. It was a moment of reckoning for George, who would one day inherit the throne, but also a subtle message from the Queen about the importance of the family's unity in supporting him. Finally, the moment that had everyone on edge arrived. Andrew's voice dropped as he read the name that had caused so much tension in recent years. To Prince Harry, I leave a ceremonial sword that once belonged to King George II. The sword, a symbol of royal tradition, was a surprising gift for Harry. In a room that had grown tense, the implications of this bequest were impossible to ignore. Was it an offering of peace? A way for the Queen to reach out to Harry after years of turmoil and separation from the family? Or was it something more subtle, perhaps a warning, a reminder of the responsibilities that came with being part of the royal family, no matter how distant from the throne one may be? William shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his discomfort obvious. The moment felt loaded, and everyone in the room was left to wonder, what did this gesture truly mean? As Andrew concluded the reading, the mood in the room was one of uncertainty. The will had provided some clarity, but it also opened the door to more questions than answers. The Queen had laid out a path for her family, but it was a path filled with complexities and contradictions. The future of the monarchy, like the royal family itself, was now in a delicate balance. The legacy of Queen Elizabeth II, built over 7 decades, was now being handed down, but the way forward was anything but clear. What had begun as a routine family moment, reading the will of a beloved monarch, had turned into a pivotal moment in the royal family's history. As the family members sat in the aftermath of the reading, each of them knew that the Queen's final words would shape their roles for years to come. And now, more than ever, the question remained: how would they move forward? Would they embrace the changes she had set in motion, or would the tensions that had simmered for years finally break the surface? The future of the British monarchy had just been rewritten, and no one knew what came next. The room was filled with an electric tension, a palpable sense of anticipation that could not be ignored. Questions swirled in the air like whispers, as those present waited for the inevitable fallout from Queen Elizabeth's will. What did her decisions truly mean for the monarchy? More importantly, what would the future hold for those in line to inherit her legacy? The room was thick with expectation. Keep watching to discover how these monumental choices would reshape the royal family. As the will was read aloud, the atmosphere in the room grew more strained with every word. King Charles, who had always expected to inherit the sprawling estates of Windsor Castle, was stunned to hear that it was not just his anymore. Balmoral, which had long been considered a personal refuge, was now to be shared. For the royal family, Balmoral had been a place where unity was forged under the current monarch's leadership. The notion of sharing it was a blow to tradition, a stark departure from the centuries-old precedent that placed the reigning monarch at the heart of every royal gathering. The idea that multiple people would now be responsible for its care was nothing short of scandalous. As Prince Andrew read aloud the contents of the will, it was as though the very air in the room shifted. You could almost feel the weight of the change. Let's examine the reactions to the will, as each family member grappled with the implications of the Queen's choices. Charles, visibly disturbed, sat with his jaw clenched. His hands rested stiffly on his knees, and while his face appeared unreadable, the deep furrow in his brow told a different story. His reaction was one of profound disappointment. He had long imagined the monarchy to be a path laid out before him, a destiny that would come with specific symbols of power and control. Now, he was faced with a new reality that defied everything he had come to expect. The division of Balmoral wasn't just a matter of property, it symbolized a shift in his place within the royal hierarchy. His composure cracked, and the subtle shift in his posture made it clear that this was not the future he had envisioned. Then there was Princess Anne, known for her quiet dedication and unwavering sense of duty. When Anne was named the inheritor of Sandringham, the weight of that decision was not lost on anyone in the room. Anne, who had always kept her emotions closely guarded, couldn't hide the slight change in her posture, a subtle shift that betrayed her surprise. Sandringham wasn't just another piece of real estate, it was a part of the family's history, a symbol of the monarchy itself. For Anne, this was a monumental responsibility that went far beyond managing land. It was about safeguarding the very future of the institution she had devoted her life to. This wasn't just an inheritance, it was an immense duty. Charles's irritation grew as the will unfolded. It wasn't just the division of Balmoral that troubled him, the very essence of his role was being questioned. Anne's new responsibilities, the shift in the family dynamics, and the Queen's choices seemed to challenge his understanding of his future. He fought to maintain his composure, but the cracks were showing. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his fingers tapping nervously on the armrest. This was not the royal inheritance he had expected, and with each passing moment, his sense of control was slipping further away. Prince William, sitting next to his wife Catherine, tried his best to remain neutral. His gaze occasionally flickered toward his father, but he quickly looked away, as though he were unwilling to confront the growing tension. It wasn't his place to speak out or challenge the will, but his eyes betrayed a quiet unease. William, the future king, was watching as the pieces of the royal puzzle slowly fell into place, and for him, it was clear that this shift in power was inevitable, but unsettling. He wasn't ready to take the throne, and yet, he could see how this moment was inevitably reshaping his destiny. Catherine, ever the supportive and composed partner, sat quietly beside him. She didn't fidget, didn't move. Her gaze remained fixed, her mind processing the gravity of the situation. She knew that this moment would change their lives, and while she understood the need for tradition to evolve, she couldn't help but feel uncertain about the future. The Queen's choices, while seemingly well thought out, had thrown the family into a whirlwind of uncertainty, and for Catherine, that uncertainty would be something she would have to navigate with care. When Andrew read aloud the mention of the Vladimir tiara, the symbol of grace and continuity within the British monarchy, Catherine's heart must have skipped a beat. The tiara was now hers. But what did that really mean? Was this a powerful symbol of her future role? Or was it simply another reminder of the heavy expectations placed upon her as she navigated her royal duties? In that moment, Catherine had to grapple with the weight of her responsibility, not just as a mother, wife, and duchess, but as someone expected to carry the legacy of the monarchy on her shoulders. As the room buzzed with murmurs, Andrew's voice cut through the tension once more. There was still more to come, and what was about to be revealed would leave the family grappling with deeper questions. The will, it seemed, was far from over. The second part of the will focused on none other than Prince Harry. The mention of Harry's name was like a bombshell. "I want Harry to take good care of the ceremonial sword of King George VI, Andrew read aloud. The room went silent. Harry, of course, wasn't present. He had long since relocated to the United States with his wife, Meghan. Yet his name still lingered in the will. This ceremonial sword wasn't just a family heirloom, it was a powerful symbol of the monarchy's service and strength. Its significance could not be overstated. For those in the room, the mention of Harry and the sword was more than just a gesture. It was a statement, a reminder of everything Harry had left behind. William, struggling to control his emotions, found it difficult to remain calm. He had always been the heir apparent, the one expected to shoulder the monarchy's future. Harry, by contrast, had chosen to step away from royal duties, distancing himself from the family. Yet here he was, still receiving recognition in the form of a powerful royal symbol. This inclusion did not sit well with William, and it was clear from his clenched jaw and furrowed brow that he didn't understand why his brother was still being treated with such respect. Charles too struggled with the situation. His calm demeanor was slipping away as the reading continued. The sword, a symbol of royal tradition and duty, seemed like a slap in the face to him as well. Harry had left the monarchy, choosing a different path, and yet he was still being acknowledged. This was a painful reminder of the divide between them, a divide that no one seemed to know how to bridge. Princess Anne, ever the stoic figure, remained unshaken. She had seen her family's divisions before, and she had learned to navigate them with grace. But even she couldn't hide the flicker of surprise when Harry's name was mentioned. The sword, with all its history and power, seemed to complicate things further. The room was filled with unspoken tension, and no one knew quite how to react. But the will was not finished yet. Andrew took a deep breath and continued. He turned his attention to the great-grandchildren, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. The Queen's words about them revealed much about the future of the monarchy. George, already in line for the throne at the tender age of 8, would carry an immense responsibility. But it was Charlotte, the spirited younger sister, who caught the eye of those in the room. Her role, though more flexible, was no less important. The Queen had always been keen on ensuring that each member of the royal family had a significant role no matter their title, and now Charlotte's future within the monarchy was becoming clearer. Catherine and William exchanged a knowing glance. As parents, they understood the weight of what was being said. They were not just raising children, they were preparing the next generation to carry the monarchy forward. The pressure was immense, and as they listened to the will unfold, they realized that the legacy of the British monarchy was now more in their hands than ever before. As Prince Andrew stood before the gathered royal family at Buckingham Palace, the weight of the moment was undeniable. The room, once filled with whispers and muted conversations, was now hushed in the presence of the Queen's last words. The will of Queen Elizabeth II, the monarch who had ruled for 70 years, was being read aloud, an occasion that was both profoundly personal and politically significant. As Andrew continued to read through the document, each word carried not just the legacy of a monarch, but the deep-seated hopes and expectations for the future of the royal family. The Queen's wishes were not just about wealth and property, they were about the enduring values of duty, compassion, and unity. As Andrew read through her instructions, he came to the first personal message for her children. "To my dear son Charles," he began, his voice steady as he recited the words that were both formal and meaningful. Charles expectedly was given the responsibility of caring for Windsor Castle, a gesture that aligned with his position as the heir to the throne. The room reacted with a quiet acknowledgement. Charles, well prepared for his future, nodded in recognition. His role had been decided long ago, and the Queen's wishes were not surprising in this regard. As the reading continued, the atmosphere in the room shifted. When Andrew reached the part concerning Sandringham Estate, it became immediately apparent that Queen Elizabeth's will was not following tradition. "I have given Sandringham Estate to my daughter," Andrew read aloud, his voice deliberately slowing as he allowed the words to settle in. The impact was instant. Sandringham, long considered a symbol of the monarchy and historically passed down to the male heir, was now to be entrusted to Princess Anne. The surprise was palpable, and Charles's expression momentarily betrayed his discomfort. This unexpected move signaled something far more profound than a mere redistribution of property. It hinted at a shift in how the monarchy would evolve in the future. Anne, ever composed and practiced in her reserved nature, did not show much outward reaction, but her eyes flickered momentarily with surprise. Her role had always been that of the quiet supporter, the one who worked behind the scenes, upholding royal duty. But now, with the Queen's will, Anne had been elevated. She was no longer just the daughter, she had become a cornerstone of the royal family. The room's energy had changed, and as Andrew moved on, there was an unspoken understanding that these were not the final wishes of a monarch simply distributing her assets. They were a message. The Queen had clearly intended to leave a mark on her family's future, and these decisions spoke volumes about the monarchy's evolution. Then Andrew turned to the Balmoral estate. "It will hold a shared purpose," he read, explaining that the estate would no longer be controlled by a single individual, but would instead be shared among several members of the family. The implications were profound. Balmoral, for generations, had been a sanctuary and a symbol of royal power associated with the reigning monarch. Now, this power would be diluted, perhaps intentionally. It was clear that Queen Elizabeth had made a subtle break from tradition, acknowledging that the monarchy must adapt and evolve with the times. Sharing such an important piece of royal history wasn't just a practical decision, it was a deeply symbolic one. The Queen had wanted to emphasize unity within her family, not division, but Charles's furrowed brow betrayed his resistance to this change. For him, Balmoral had always represented royal authority, a place where the monarch's influence was absolute. The idea of sharing it seemed to go against everything he had known. Andrew continued with the reading, moving on to the younger generation, and the significance of Kate Middleton's gift was immediately evident. "To Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, I give the Vladimir tiara, which stands for grace and continuation," Andrew read, the words hanging in the air. The tiara, a deeply symbolic piece of royal jewelry, was much more than a gift. It was a clear recognition of Kate's place in the future of the monarchy. For Kate, this tiara wasn't just a token of her status, it was a message from the Queen herself, a subtle but powerful endorsement of her role. Kate's eyes flickered with gratitude, but her expression remained composed, reflecting her understanding of the weight of the legacy she was now a part of. The Queen's gesture was a reminder that, despite everything, Kate was the future. Her place in the royal family and in history was secure. As Andrew moved on, the mood deepened further. When he came to Prince George and Princess Charlotte, the Queen's words carried additional weight. Her message to George, the future king, was particularly poignant. George has a responsibility as the future king, a responsibility that goes beyond the title itself. It is a duty to the people. For George, still young but already recognized as the heir to the throne, the Queen's message was unmistakable. His role would not be about the glamour of the crown, but about service. It was about duty to the people, not just the title he would inherit. The Queen had made it clear, George's reign would be defined not by privilege, but by the kindness and strength of those around him. Then came the moment that everyone had been waiting for, the part of the reading that felt most loaded with meaning. As Andrew dropped his voice, he read aloud the Queen's bequest to Prince Harry. To Prince Harry, I leave a ceremonial sword that once belonged to King George II, he recited. The room seemed to hold its breath. The sword, a symbol of royal duty, was an unexpected gift for Harry, whose relationship with the family had been complicated in recent years. The significance of the gesture was immediate, and the weight of its meaning did not go unnoticed. Was this an olive branch from the Queen, a symbol of reconciliation after years of estrangement, or was it a subtle reminder that no matter how far removed from the throne he became, Harry would always carry the responsibility of his royal lineage? The room seemed to shift uncomfortably, the tension palpable. Prince William, always the steady presence, seemed particularly uneasy. His expression, usually composed, had momentarily darkened, a reflection of the weight of the moment. The sword, once belonging to a monarch long gone, now symbolized something much deeper, perhaps a bridge to the past, or perhaps a symbol of what Harry could never fully escape. Whatever the intention behind the gift, it was clear that the Queen's final words carried more than a material message. The sword was a reminder of Harry's duty, not only as a member of the royal family, but as someone who would always be tethered to it. Regardless of the distance he tried to place between himself and the institution. The family members, who had each absorbed the implications of their mother's will in different ways, now sat in a heavy silence. The room was thick with unspoken thoughts, the weight of legacy and future expectations settling on each of them. It was clear that the Queen's final wishes would not just shape their lives individually, they would have a profound effect on the monarchy itself. Each gift, each decision, carried with it not only the transfer of assets, but the transfer of responsibility. The shift within the royal family had begun, and it was evident that the legacy of Queen Elizabeth would be a living, breathing entity that would continue to shape the monarchy for years to come. Each royal family member would have to find their place within this evolving framework, navigating the delicate balance between tradition and change. What do you think of the Queen's final will? Did it bring clarity to the family's path forward, or did it leave them with more questions than answers? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exclusive insights into the royal family's future. As Andrew finished reading the will, he paused for a moment, the final words of Queen Elizabeth's will still hanging in the air. The document had not just laid out the distribution of her wealth and properties, but also contained a far deeper message, a vision for the monarchy's future. Unity amidst division, Andrew read aloud, quoting the Queen's simple yet powerful wish. Her final words were not just a directive, but a call to action, a plea for the royal family to come together and support one another despite the rifts and disagreements that had often plagued their unity. The Queen's message was urgent, almost as if she had known that the family needed to find common ground for the monarchy to endure. As Andrew scanned the faces of his family, the weight of the moment settled heavily in the room. It was as though time itself had slowed, each member absorbing the full impact of the Queen's final words. Their significance, initially subtle, slowly began to sink in. For Princess Anne, who had always been the quiet, steadfast pillar of the royal family, the recognition from her mother was especially poignant. In her will, Queen Elizabeth had singled out Anne as the family's anchor, the steady, unwavering force that had kept the monarchy grounded through turbulent times. This acknowledgement, rare for someone who had never sought the spotlight, was a precious gift. For Anne, it was the validation she had always eschewed, yet now found herself deeply appreciative of. A simple nod from her was all she needed to express her understanding of the gravity of her mother's recognition. In that fleeting moment, Anne had been seen, not just as the reliable royal, but as an irreplaceable force within the family. It was a moment of validation, a recognition more valuable than any title or material possession. As Andrew continued to read the will, a sense of quiet reverence filled the room. The silence that followed wasn't filled with tension, but with contemplation, a moment where each family member seemed lost in their thoughts, processing the Queen's words. The room, which had been alive with whispers and anticipation just moments before, now felt eerily still. It was as if the walls themselves had absorbed the gravity of what had just been revealed. It was clear this was not merely the reading of a will, but the reading of a legacy that would shape the royal family's future in ways they had not yet fully understood. The room was suspended in time, as if the echoes of the Queen's voice were still reverberating within its walls. Charles, the eldest son and heir to the throne, was the first to break the silence. His voice, though steady, carried a firmness that demanded attention. "We are the custodians of her legacy," Charles declared, his words reverberating through the space. This is not just a privilege, it is a duty we must honor with the utmost dedication and unity. His words were clear, resolute, a reminder of the immense responsibility now resting on their shoulders. His tone stirred something in each of them, a collective recognition that the weight they now carried was not just a ceremonial one. It was a legacy passed down through generations, one that could no longer be ignored or taken lightly. There was an unspoken understanding in the room that the Queen had given them more than just her wealth or titles. She had entrusted them with the survival and future of the monarchy itself. The family's unity, their ability to work together despite their differences, had now become the most pressing concern. The stakes had never been higher, and as the heir to the throne, Charles was keenly aware of the responsibilities that lay ahead. His mother's death had opened a new chapter in royal history, one that would require not just the unity of the family, but their collective strength to move forward. The royal family, for all its pomp and ceremony, had always been a reflection of the society it represented, a society that had undergone immense changes over the decades. The monarchy was no longer the distant, impervious institution it once was. The modern world demanded that it evolve, that it remain relevant, and that it adapt to the changing expectations of the public. This, more than ever, was the true legacy of Queen Elizabeth. It wasn't the jewels or palaces, but the enduring values she instilled in her family. The values of duty, service, and above all, unity. The Queen had always been a symbol of continuity, a rock upon which the monarchy had rested. Now, that mantle had passed to her children, and the future of the monarchy depended on their ability to carry it forward. As the weight of their mother's words hung in the air, each family member found themselves at a crossroads. The future of the royal family, the institution they had spent their lives serving, now lay in their hands. It was a responsibility that none could shirk. Charles, with his years of preparation and experience, was ready to step into the role of king, but he knew he would not be alone in this journey. He was surrounded by his siblings, each of them holding a piece of the legacy that had been entrusted to them. The royal family had always been marked by a sense of public duty and service. But now, as the years of Queen Elizabeth's reign came to a close, they faced a new challenge. The monarchy would have to evolve, adapt, and come together in ways it had not done before. The world was changing at an unprecedented pace, and it was up to this new generation of royals to lead it into the future. The Queen had set the course, now it was up to her children to navigate the stormy waters ahead. But for now, they stood united. If not in their resolve, then at least in their understanding of the task before them. They knew the journey would be long and fraught with challenges, but they also understood the immense responsibility that came with their roles. The future of the monarchy had been placed in their hands, and it was a responsibility they could not take lightly. As the family left the room, each member processing the Queen's final words in their own way, the legacy of her reign remained fresh in their minds. Unity amidst division, a call to action, a reminder that the monarchy was more than just an institution. It was a living, breathing entity, dependent on the strength and unity of the family that upheld it. What do you think of Queen Elizabeth's final will? Did it provide the royal family with a clear path forward, or did it leave them with more questions than answers? Share your thoughts in the comments, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exclusive insights into the royal family's future. Anne, ever the quiet observer, lingered behind as the rest of the royal family began to disperse. The weight of the day's events seemed to settle on her shoulders more heavily than it did on anyone else. She had always been the one to keep things together, to remain in the background while others took center stage. But now, with the Queen's final message, Anne felt the mantle of leadership resting firmly on her. The papers in front of her were neatly folded, their crisp edges a stark reminder of the responsibility she, along with her siblings, now carried. She sat motionless for a moment, her gaze fixed on the envelope that contained her mother's carefully crafted words. Although the future of the monarchy hung in the balance, Anne knew her mother's wishes had been clear. It was now their responsibility, as the Queen's children, to ensure the monarchy not only endured but adapted to the evolving times. Outside Buckingham Palace, life proceeded as it always had. The palace gardens stood serene, their tranquility a sharp contrast to the emotional storm that had just passed through the royal family's inner sanctum. The rest of the world remained unaware, but within those hallowed walls, a quiet shift had just occurred. The reading of Queen Elizabeth's will had heralded the dawn of a new era for the royal family, an era filled with both uncertainty and potential. The monarchy, once seemingly unchangeable, was now at a crossroads. While some aspects of the Queen's final wishes were clear, They also opened the door to new questions and challenges regarding how the royal family would move forward in the years to come. For Anne, the task ahead was now clear. She had never shied away from responsibility, but this felt different. Her mother's words had underscored the importance of unity, strength, and service, values that Anne had lived by throughout her life. But now, more than ever, these values would be put to the test. She understood that the monarchy's role was evolving, and it was up to her generation to ensure it adapted, while also safeguarding the ideals it had always upheld. Anne's mind raced with thoughts of the future, of the challenges that lay ahead, but she remained calm. She knew that the Queen's legacy, her guidance, her lessons, would be the compass they needed to navigate these uncertain waters. Prince Charles too seemed to grasp the gravity of the moment. As he reflected on the monarchy's future, his words were more than just a call to action. They were a reminder that their work was far from over. The family had spent decades under the weight of their royal duties, and now, more than ever, the Queen's words would serve as their guiding light. They were tasked not only with maintaining the monarchy, but also with ensuring that it adapted to the changing world around them. The world was evolving, and the royal family had to evolve with it. Despite the uncertainty that hung in the air, one thing was abundantly clear. The duty to serve the people and carry forward the royal legacy was a responsibility that no one could escape. The burden of the monarchy was heavy, but it was one they had all chosen to bear. In the wake of Queen Elizabeth's passing, the royal family was now called upon to lead with the same strength, grace, and resilience that had defined her reign. As Anne looked around the room at the faces of her siblings, each of them processing the moment in their own way, she knew that their path forward would not be easy. There would be challenges, questions of relevancy, public perception, and the evolving role of the monarchy in a modern world. But there was also the promise of continuity, of the royal family's enduring commitment to service and to the values that had guided it through centuries. It was up to this generation to navigate the future, and while they may not have all the answers yet, they were united in their resolve to face whatever came next as a family and as stewards of the monarchy. The weight of the moment was not lost on any of them. The monarchy was at a pivotal point, and it was their responsibility to ensure its survival and relevance in the years to come. Yet despite the uncertainty and the challenges that awaited, there was a sense of determination, a collective understanding that the legacy of Queen Elizabeth would continue to guide them, even when the road ahead seemed unclear. In the days to come, the royal family would begin to move forward, each member finding their place within the evolving framework. But for now, they were united in their recognition of the profound responsibility they carried. The monarchy's future was uncertain, but the duty to serve, to adapt, and to lead was something that could not be ignored. The Queen's final wishes had set the stage for a new chapter, and the royal family would have to find their way through it, together. What do you think of Queen Elizabeth's final will? Did it provide the royal family with a clear path forward, or did it leave them with more questions than answers? Share your thoughts in the comments, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exclusive insights into the royal family's future. As the family members slowly drifted to different corners of the room, each seemingly absorbed in their own thoughts, the gravity of the moment was undeniable. The passing of Queen Elizabeth had altered the very fabric of the monarchy, and while her legacy had once been seen as an unshakable foundation, it was now an evolving force, shaping the future in ways that could not be predicted. The monarchy, for all its centuries of tradition, was at a crossroads, and each royal family member knew that their roles in this new chapter would not be without challenges. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they had the power to shape it. Princess Anne, ever the quiet observer, lingered behind, allowing the full weight of the moment to settle. She wasn't in any hurry to leave. The finality of the Queen's will was something that required time to process, to understand the enormity of what had just been laid before them. The words written by the Queen, her carefully crafted legacy, and the quiet expectation of what was to come had all been placed squarely on their shoulders. Anne knew, as the others did, that the Queen had prepared them well, not only her children but the entire family. This preparation, done over the course of decades, was not just for the title they held, but for the responsibility that came with it. As Anne folded the papers carefully and placed them back into the envelope, she took a long, steadying breath, bracing herself for the uncertainty that lay ahead. She understood that the future of the monarchy rested as much in her hands as it did in the hands of her siblings. Yet, perhaps more importantly, she knew that the monarchy's true strength had never been about wealth, titles, or grandeur. It was about its ability to adapt, to evolve, and to remain relevant to the people it served.
The Queen's message had been clear. It was not the trappings of royalty that defined them, but the strength to change when necessary, to reflect the needs and aspirations of the people. With one final lingering look at the papers, Anne stood, composed herself, and made her way out of the room. The weight of what had just transpired would remain with her, but she also knew that the Queen's guiding principles would continue to steer them even in times of uncertainty. The path forward may not have been entirely clear, but the values that Queen Elizabeth had instilled in them would continue to guide the family in ways that words on paper never could.
Inside the palace, the shift was palpable. A quiet revolution had taken place, one that would not be immediately apparent to the outside world, but that would forever alter the royal family's structure. For the first time in a long while, the family stood united, fully aware of the immense responsibility now resting on their collective shoulders. The monarchy's future, though uncertain, would be defined by their ability to work together, to adapt, and to lead with the same sense of duty and respect that had characterized Queen Elizabeth's reign. Outside the palace walls, life would continue as usual. The world, as it often does, would remain unaware of the quiet storm that had just unfolded within the royal family. But inside, the monarchy had been irrevocably changed. The future now lay in their hands, and though the road ahead would be challenging, they were more united and resolute than ever before. What do you think of Queen Elizabeth's final will? Did it offer the royal family a clear direction for the future, or did it leave them with more questions than answers? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exclusive insights into the future of the British royal family.